سارة، صار عندي حادث سيارة واتصلت بالمحامي كاجي.
قصدين أنتي المحامي كاج؟
يعني هذا المكتب اللي قالوا عليه أكبر مكتب محاماة عربي كلداني بأمريكا، قاجي؟
لا أنا محامي بالكاجي لا. أنا أعرف لورنس، هو قال لي كاجي لا.
أنا أعرف العائلة زين، يقولوها قاجي.
بعد أي حادث سيارة اتصلوا بي، أنا محامي لورنس قاجي. 248-702-6641 248-702-6641.
أعزائي المستمعين، أهلا وسهلا بكم في برنامجنا الجميل، برنامج المحامي لورنس قاجي. ومعنا في الاستوديو المحامي لورنس قاجي. نقول welcome Mr. Lawrence.
I'll try this in Arabic. أهلا وسهلا. There you go.
روعة. وإحنا نتكلم أيضا ونرحب بالمحامي جون شرودر. أهلا وسهلا.
Yeah, I'll try this in English. Hello. Thanks for having us.
ونرحب طبعا بالعزيزة الأخت تمارا. أهلا وسهلا بك.
يا ألف هلا بالكل.
طبعا اليوم أيضا موضوعنا راح يكون شيق إن شاء الله.
إن شاء الله.
ونكمل ما بدينا به بالأسبوعين أو 3 أسابيع الماضية، القصص الموجودة في مكتبنا، مثل مكتب المحامي لورنس. تمام.
أي القصص هاي تربط بين هي قصص حقيقية
طبعا،
تربط بين الحقيقة والقانون، فتصير أسهل للمستمعين بأنه يربطون شنو هاي الجزء من القضية وشنو اللي صار. هاي همنا فشيء جدا مهم.
طبعا الخطوط راح تكون مفتوحة لاستقبال مكالماتكم. أي واحد عنده سؤال مو شرط يكون أنه على نفس الموضوع اللي بدنا نحكي به، لكن أي موضوع يخص المحاماة، لأنه مكتب المحامي لورنس قاجي هو أكبر مكتب محاماة في ميشيغان وفي أمريكا كلداني عربي.
نعم.
تمام؟
صح.
فلك المايك.
Yes. So we are going to finish some of the real stories and real cases that happen. And I told Mr. Sahar that it is also not just a story, it is also a connection between the story and the law and the policies. And when we explain, it is more, it comes easier to the listener what we mean with that.
Yes, exactly. We're able, it's good to share the stories of how things turned out. It's all, it's fun, and it's important to talk about the law and I think what the law is, but applying sort of the theory to the facts of a case makes it a little clearer.
Yeah. Just to remind the listeners, we have an Instagram page, 877 KG Cares. We also have a LinkedIn page. We also have a Facebook page. So if anyone wants to follow us, I do post informational videos. Yes. At least once a week. We also do, oftentimes we'll do a settlement post. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we'll just do random posts if it's, Employee Appreciation Day and, just want to post something. So follow us. We're trying to get some more followers on those pages, and I'll continue to pump out some content for everyone.
Yes. نحب نذكر المستمعين بأنه احنا عندنا انستغرام، صفحة انستغرام اللي هي KJ 877 KJ Cares، وعندنا همينا لينكدين وفيسبوك. طبعا الانستغرام نحاول كل بالاسبوع مرة لو مرتين ننزل همينا اشياء عن الانشورنس، لو البوليسيز، لو اي معلومات مهمه ننزل همينا اذا سوينا اي تسويه عالي جيده. لو مرات ننزل اشياء تصير بالاوفيس، مثلا الامبلوي ابريشيشن داي، مثلا هاليوم is Detroit Day.
Yes, 313 Day. Yes,
313 Day. Today is Detroit Day. So
I couldn't. I was going to wear something, but we're coming to the radio today. So.
Yes, me too. That's why. But so please follow us, and it is very informational. تابعونا جدا مهمة لأنه همنا بها معلومات.
You can also ask us questions on Instagram. You can comment. You can reach out to us that way. Also, just to remind the listeners, give us a call for anything law related. So whatever you guys need help with, give us a call. We're always here for you guys. 248-702-6641.
اوكي مو بس تتابعونا، اذا عندكم اي سؤال تقدرون هم تكتبوا على الانستغرام، اذا تريدون تحطون اي تعليق هم تقدرون تحطون تعليق. اذا اي سؤال الى اي نوع من المحاماه تحتاجون اتصلوا للمكتب، الاستشاره مجانيه، رقم المكتب 248-702-6641.
Last thing, so and also if there's anyone out there that's looking to go to law school or is a lawyer that's looking for some employment, we're always hiring, so give us a call. We're always happy to meet with someone and see if they'd be a good fit for our office.
جميل.
اي احد يروح يدرس المحاماه او راح يروح دراسه المحاماه ويحب التدريب، يقدر دائما احنا نشوف طلاب يعني يجون يتدربون ويانا، وكذلك اذا اكو اي محامين تعرفوهم يعني يريدون هم شغل، احنا دائما يعني مفتوح
مفتوح المكتب.
مكتب بالضبط.
Yeah, we're always looking for good lawyers, and we've had a lot of good luck getting people that are new lawyers and training them in how we do things, and we have a few lawyers that we did that with that are doing very well for us right now. So
المحامين الآخر شيء الجوي يعني كانوا يعني بعدهم صغار بس تدربوا كلش أقوياء كلش زينين، نحب ننطي أي فرص أخرى للبقية طبعا.
So let's jump right in. So one story I left out last week I wanted to talk about for a couple of reasons. One, we got a really good settlement out of it. Second reason is we've talked about settling your case pre-suit on the radio, right before litigation. I think this case was settled, what, John, maybe 4 months after the accident?
6, so somewhere in there.
Yeah,
it was definitely less than a year for sure. We didn't even have to file a lawsuit.
Yeah, so this is a good example of what we can do without filing a lawsuit.
Yeah. واحدة من القصص الحقيقية اللي صارت حكينا بهالموضوع بأنه إحنا نقدر هم نسوي تسوية قبل ما نرفع أي شيء للإنشورنس، نقدر ندز الطلب ونقدر نسوي تسوية. واحدة من الأشياء اللي صارت تقريبا 4 أشهر أو 6 أشهر وراء الحادث قدرنا نسوي تسوية كاملة. طبعا هيك التسويات تكون الحدث يعني له ضرر كبير، له مبين الأضرار مال عمر طويل، فلذلك يصير بها التسوية أسرع. ما ننتظر إلى السنة لو سنتين لو سنتين ونص، يعني هم نشوف هذه القضية، ننتظر هاي القضية تمشي ونمشي حتى حسب الأولويات بأنه هل نقدر نسوي تسوية أو لا.
يعني التقييم أيضا.
بالضبط. بالضبط.
And listen, just to be frank, and John knows this very well. I personally don't love to settle cases pre-suit because oftentimes it's a lower amount than what I think we would get if we litigated the case.
Yes.
This case was not that situation. We did get a really good amount for the injuries and the crash. But just in general, I do like to go through the litigation process because in my experience, we get 2 to 3 times what the initial offer is in pre-suit. So if the client's okay with waiting an extra year, going through the litigation process, letting us do all the work, they'll likely end up with more money from my experience.
Yeah. مثل ما قلت بأنه من نسوي التسوية قبل ما نرفع قضية معناته أكو فد ضرر كبير لو فد شيء جدا واضح، بس أكثر الأحيان ومثل ما قال المحامي هسه بأنه إحنا نرفع قضية لأنه من ترفع قضية التسوية تكون أعلى مما تطلبها قبل ما ترفع القضية. بس همينا طبعا احنا نشتغل بالقضية الزبون يكون احنا نمشي بها إلى.
And I just want to add on to that, Lawrence, I think you're absolutely right. I think that there are a lot of cases where you have to go to litigation, but there are also some where you don't have to. And, I like to let my clients know when they come in, because they will often ask me, do I have to file a lawsuit right away, right? And one of the first questions, like, am I going to be suing people, tomorrow? And the answer, is no, not necessarily, right? Because we will work with the insurance company. We try to, at least in the beginning, but unfortunately, insurance companies are, I mean, they're businesses, right? And
so John likes the pre-suit stuff a little bit more than I do.
Yes.
There are pros to it. There's no doubt about it.
No.
I mean, you're saving probably a year and a half worth of time. Right. And sometimes the offer, if they're offering, I'm just throwing out numbers, 30 grand before pre-lit, and then they only go up 10,000 in a year and a half of litigating. Sometimes it's not worth it to go through the litigation process.
Exactly.
It's actually a inside thing that me and John have too, where we, I like the litigation stuff. He likes to proceed, not all, but he.
I mean, I like them both, but
he's more open to it than I am, I would say.
that's fair. But everybody has their unique style,
like
and I think
said, there are pros and cons to both.
Yeah, and I think it's a strength that you have different attorneys, right, that have different styles and different thought processes, and you and I in particular, but everybody at the firm, right? We all like to talk about it and kind of like work through it and say, well, what makes the most sense, for the client and for the case and just in general,
right?
And sometimes also it depends on the case. It's how it happened.
Like I'm saying, this case was right before a pre-suit settlement, and I think we did a great job with this. But this is like an inside thing that mean.
مثل ما تفضلوا المحامين يعني
continuing fight.
الحديث اللي بيناتهم اللي هو يسموه بأنه هم يعني واحد يسوي تشالنج للآخر بما لذلك اكو هوايه محامين مختلفين كل واحد ينطي رايه دائما يقعدون سوا كل واحد ينطي رايه ونختار الراي الصحيح لهاي القضيه حتى نمشي بيها.
Yeah. So in this particular case that brought up this whole thing, we had a female passenger that was involved in a car accident and sustained pretty serious injuries. She had a couple fractures, I think a left ankle fracture, fracture in the left leg as well, and you had a bunch of broken bones and just wasn't a good situation. I think she also had a lung issue.
Yeah, there was a collapsed lung, and I think arguably even more importantly than that, at least from her perspective, not necessarily like as an injury, but she was pregnant at the time, and she was worried about her unborn child.
Yes. So what we do initially is we send, as soon as we sign up a client, we'll send a letter to the at-fault driver, just letting them know that we represent this person and that they're listed as at fault on the police report, or we have other evidence that shows that person is at fault. And what that person did was turn that letter over to his insurance company, and the insurance company reached out to us and made us an offer.
هذه القصة الحادثة الزبونة كانت الراكبة وليس السائقة صار الحادث اتأذت كلش هواية رجليها الكاحل انكسر رجليها انكسرت الرئة مالتها يعني تأذت كلش كبيرة وأهم شيء الزبونة كانت حامل فمن جدتي أول شيء إحنا اللي نسويه رأسا نشوف منو كان الغلطان بالحادث دزينا للغلطان رسالة بأنه أنت كنت غلطان بالحادث بالنسبة لمالتنا الزبونة وهو رأسا ودى مالته هاي الرسالة للإنشورنس مالته اتصلوا بينا وشافوا شنو الأضرار ورادوا يسوون رأسا تسوية.
Now, before you get to that offer, though, Lawrence, I have to say we did also, before they made any offers, put quite a bit of work into it, gathering medical records and sending a demand along with all these records and showing their injuries.
I think so. They just reached out to us, and then we said a demand, or was it the other way?
So I believe in this case, they had indicated that they were accepting liability and would be open to a demand, but they did not offer any money initially.
Right.
Then, after we put together the records and sent a demand, they did make an initial modest offer. So.
اللي صار بينه من الغلطان قدم الأوراق مالته الانشورنس قبلت بأنه هو كان غلطان فهذا مالته بالضبط وكانت يعني مفتوحة بأنه نسوي تسوية فسوينا احنا خلينا الطلب جبنا كل التقارير الطبية. طبعا سووا لها عملية فتح بطن للولادة emergency لأنه كانت في حالة مو زينة. قبلوا الطلب.
حلو.
Yes, and we settled for.
Well, before we get there,
Yes.
though.
ما تريد توصل للمبلغ هسه.
So they.
Samara gets very excited when
I know.
Yes. What do we get? What do we get? So I promise it's coming. It's coming.
It's coming.
I think there were a couple things that were interesting, right? So their initial offer, I guess we should tell the listeners what they initially offered.
Yeah.
It was around what, 200,000, I believe.
I actually think the initial offer was like 100,000.
It might have been. It was around 100. But after a little bit of back and forth, I think they went up to about 200. But I think what was particularly fun about this one, at least from the lawyer's perspective, they were completely discounting the pregnancy initially. And
so in terms, you mean they didn't want to give any value to
correct
to her being pregnant?
That's right. And their argument, which I mean, I could understand it, right? Their argument was, well, she wasn't, her pregnancy wasn't injured. Her child was born and the child was fine, which was great. But we pushed back on that because she had had children in the past, and all of those were regular, were the standard birth. Okay, no C-section or no intervention,
natural delivery. Yeah.
Right. But as a result of this accident, there was an emergency C-section, and the child was born early.
Yeah.
And we argued that may not be a traditional injury, but there's a mental impact of that, right? One of the things that we're arguing for in our cases is for both physical pain, right, and the mental suffering associated with the accident. And, this was something that really impacted her in terms of her mental state, because she was worried that there was going to be a major complication.
So اللي صار بهذا القضية الانشورنس قلت لك قبله الانشورنس مال ضد اللي ضربها الغلطان قبل بأنه يدفع التسوية 100,000. كتابكم صعدوا إلى 200,000. الشغلة الوحيدة اللي ما قبله هم يحسبون بيها هي بأنه اللي هي كانت حامل. قالوا هي كانت حامل وجابت وماكو شيء. اللي صار بأنه هي ما جابت طبيعي، جابت فتح بطن، جابت قبل وقت وكان emergency. احنا مو بس للأضرار الجسدية، احنا للحالة النفسية همينة.
I'm actually gonna. Sorry, Tamara,
No.
you finished?
Yeah.
I'm actually gonna flip this in terms of the client, not even the baby.
Right.
Why is this any different than our client being involved in a car accident, breaking a bone in his or her back, and having to do a back surgery, for example, or some sort of surgery?
Right.
If she's having all of her kids natural and she had to do an emergency C-section, why is that any different than having a surgery on your ankle after an accident?
But that's exactly what we argued to them. And we said, look, she had to undergo a surgery, right? A C-section is still a surgery.
Yeah.
As a result of the motor vehicle accident, and that absolutely should count. And I think the initial adjuster had rejected that sort of argument, but we pushed through over to the management side of it, and ultimately won the argument with the insurance company, frankly. And they kind of caved and said, okay, you might be right, without technically admitting it.
Yeah. النقطة وين كانت بأنه هي كان عندها عدة أطفال. الأطفال الباقين اجوا بطريقة طبيعية. هاي بأنه أي حادث أي عندك أي كسر، لا لو حتى لو مو كسر هم تحتاج عملية. هاي أهمية. فتح البطن واحدة من العمليات الكبرى تعتبر. ضلينا ندفع الانشورنس بأنه يدفعون أكثر. الانشورنس ما قبلت، فصعدنا للمانجمنت مالتهم، وأخيرا يعني وافقوا.
Yeah. So we ended up settling the case. John, you remember you worked on this?
Yeah, it was about 400,000.
Yeah, 400,000. Yeah.
So we gave you your answer at last, Tamara.
Not for me.
It only took about 10
I know
minutes.
what I
Yeah.
have in front of me. For the listeners. وبالأخير توافقوا الانشورنس من 100 صعدوا لل200 ورا ما حكينا وضفنا بأنه هي حامل وهيك سوينا تسوية إلى 400,000.
But it was nice. You know, it's a nice thing because, you know, she didn't have to wait. She got a good settlement. And, you know, I believe, Tamara, you might remember this. I believe that she was able to get a new car and pay off some of her debts. And,
Yes.
you know, it helped a lot.
It helped a lot.
So, and
It helps everybody a lot.
Yeah. And it's really wonderful when, you know, your client's able to, you know, live a little bit of a better life.
Yeah.
You know, after a case like this.
ورا حادث كبير واللي مرت به طبعا المبلغ ساعدها يعني ويا أطفالها ويا حياتها. Okay.
So we can go on to another one if that works.
Yeah.
So let's see. We've got one quick story about the owner of a beauty academy, and then a story about a trial. Which one would you like to? What do you think we should start with, Lawrence?
It's your call.
My call.
I had the first story, I guess. So
All right.
This one's up to you.
All right. You know, I guess I'm going to start with a trial. This is from a few years back, but I had a fun trial not too long ago that you know I really enjoyed. There was a case that I had relating to a stolen vehicle, actually. But I think it's kind of emblematic of some of the things that you worry about when you go to trial. You know, probably 95 to 98% of cases don't go to trial, right? Would that be true for our firm? Wouldn't you say? Yeah. And I think that's generally true. Oh, great caller.
ألو مرحبا.
مرحبا.
أهلا وسهلا.
ممكن أسأل سؤال؟
تفضلي.
أنا عندي بنية أعرفها قبل كم يوم سوت حادث فهي هسه جديدة بالسوق فصعدت وين أكو ترافيك الرصيف صعدت هناك وبعدين نزلت ضربت سيارة مع ناس واقفين بالباب. فبهالحالة يجي بوليس وهاي شنو يعني راح يسوون لها؟
اوكي اشرح للمحامي ونجاوبك حبيبي. Her friend, she is a new driver.
Okay.
It looks like she lost a little bit control. She went up over a curb or something, and then she hit a parked car.
Okay.
And she's asking, what are they going to do? The police came and everything. What are they going to do for her?
That's a great question. So when you say against her, are you referring to like the police, or is she asking about what the owner of the car that she hit, that her friend would hit, is going to do?
سؤالنا لك حبيبي، هل تسألين شنو ضدها من طرف الشرطة لو من طرف صاحب السيارة؟
يعني الاثنيناتهم الشرطة ايش راح يسووا لها؟ لأن ضربت الرصيف هي مال الترافيك وبعدين دخلت بالفرع وضربت السيارة اللي واقفة بالباب.
اوكي. الرصيف همين تأذى؟
شوية تأذى.
Okay. So when she hit the curb, it looks like what got broken because it is a public street. So there is police. She's asking about the police, what they are going to do, and what the other car
and the owner of the car that was parked.
Okay. Did she get a ticket for anything? Did she get a traffic ticket?
Probably.
انطوها تيكت؟
صدقيني قالوا لها على اساس انطبعت ما اعرف انطوها التيكت ما انطوها لانه يوم الاحد صار الحادث.
Okay, so there's a couple things here, and I guess Lawrence, do you want to start or?
تظلين سمعينا على الراديو؟
نعم.
اوكي شكرا.
She can stay if she wants. So, you know, there's a whole bunch of different things that can happen here, right? It depends on the individual circumstances. So first of all, very commonly she can get a ticket if she caused any damage to infrastructure. For example, light posts, poles, whatever. She may end up getting a bill in the mail for the damage to whatever property was done. Okay, that's the first thing. Secondly, there's and frankly tickets as well. If you lose control, you can end up getting a ticket in the mail. It could be for reckless driving. It could be for speeding. There are a couple different things that can happen.
If she didn't get a ticket at the scene, the likelihood of her getting a ticket later
is lower. For sure. But it's still possible.
It's still possible. Yeah.
Okay. اولا انت ما نعرف بانه هي هل اخذت التيكت وين من صار الحادث لو بعد. اذا من صار الحادث وما انطاها الشرطي تيكت، احتمال اكو تيكت يجي عن طريق البريد، احتمال، بس التيكت احتمال لو يجوز ماكو تيكت، فما ندري.
شلون ماكو تيكت؟ يعني يصير حادث شلون بيصير تيكت؟
مرات الشرطي يقول يعني صار حادث
يعني قدر
بالضبط.
يعني ما متقصد
بالضبط. اي النقطة الثانية بأنه إذا أكو ضرر لأي شيء عام، مثلا حافة الرصيف، أو إذا العامود، لو عامود كهرباء، لو مالت أي شيء، يجيها تجيها فاتورة من السيتي، لازم تدفع الأضرار.
هيك تصير.
نعم.
Now, the other thing that can happen as well, there are things called civil infractions, and then there's misdemeanors. And depending upon the type of ticket, if it rises to a misdemeanor level or higher, then she could potentially face criminal prosecution. In this situation as described, it's pretty unlikely, so I wouldn't worry about it necessarily unless there was alcohol involved. Because if there is alcohol involved, they will almost certainly address that in the courts.
الشغلة الثانية بأنه يعتمد همينة إذا أخذت التيكت، يعتمد شنو نوع التيكت. إذا بس يعني أضرار ومم يعني مو متقصدة وما مسوية شيء، هاي يكون هذا عام، يعني مو civil اللي هو
شيء
مدني بالضبط.
civil infraction versus misdemeanor or higher.
المستمينر هي بأنه أنت مثلا يكون السائق تحت تأثير كحول أو أدوية أو لأي سبب، هاي تصعد وتصير قضية جنائية. Yes.
Now Lawrence and I are not really criminal attorneys. We don't generally handle that. I have handled a few misdemeanor cases in the past. And if the person that she's referring to does need assistance, we can certainly refer her to someone who can assist her with the tickets, or if she's prosecuted for something, we can certainly get her to someone who can assist her with that as well.
إذا أخذت أي تيكت وعندها أي سؤال، تقدر تتصل للمكتب وتتكلم وياي، وإحنا نقدر نساعدها بالمكتب. الاستشارة مجانية. اكتبي رقم المكتب 248-702-6641.
Yeah, and then
also if she was injured in that accident, she may have a case.
Absolutely.
Yeah, she may have a first party case.
That's very true.
وإذا الصديقة متأذية جسديا، همين عندها قضية بس مال طبابة، بس هم تقدر تتعالج. وهم تقدر كيس بالضبط، وتقدر تتصل بيا ومو مشكلة.
Even if it's completely her fault, you were going to say. I'm sorry.
Even if she's at fault,
بالضبط. حتى لو هي 100% هي الغلطانة، هم يصير عندها قضية.
She can still get her medical bills paid. She can still get any خدمة replacement services.
ما ندري إذا عندها شغل وما تقدر تشتغل من وراء الأضرار مالتها، يطلع لها رواتب. إذا مثلا صار بها ما تقدر تشتغل بالبيت وأحد يساعدها بالبيت، هاي كلها تقدر تحصلها.
Yeah.
إذا هي متضررة.
لأنه هي مو قديمة يوم الأحد يقول مو.
Yes, that happened just last
Sunday.
And then in addition, now she also asked about what's going to happen with respect to the other car, right? So this is a parked vehicle, presumably based because the caller asked about it. The owner of the vehicle knows that their car was hit, and so what there's a couple different pieces of recourse there, but generally speaking, assuming there wasn't anyone in the car who was injured, what they might be worried about was the vehicle damage. And with that, there's actually kind of some good news for the person who lost control, her friend, because usually the way it works in Michigan is that you have to have collision coverage on a vehicle in order to have it covered. And the only physical damage that you can usually receive is under the Michigan Mini Tort. And that's a maximum of $3,000. So the likelihood is good that she will receive a bill for the damage to the vehicle, but it's likely to be $3,000 or less under Michigan's Mini Tort law.
اوكي. بالنسبه للسياره اللي كانت واقفه، اذا هي واقفه احتمال ما بها اي احد، اذا ما بها اي احد فلا بس تصليح سياره. تصليح السياره لازم هو ابو صاحب السياره اللي هو الكانت بارك، لازم عنده انشورنس بها ما تصليح سياره. اذا ما عنده يقدرون يروحون وراء صديقتها، الانشورنس مالتها يسموها ميني تورت هنا، الى $3000 فقط يدفعون فقط، وهاي تجيها الفاتوره تروح للانشورنس مالتها والانشورنس
بس السؤال، اذا السياره هي اللي دسوق دزوا لها قائمه،
اوكي،
دزوا لها قائمه مال رصيف مثلا، هذا الانشورنس يدفعها؟
Okay.
What was the question?
The question is, if the city send her a bill, what should she do with the bill? Should she send it to her insurance?
Yeah. So I would always suggest doing that, right?
Yes.
At least find out if you have the coverage,
Property,
because you usually do, right? There's
Yes.
Property damage insurance that is required under Michigan law. And if it's a significant bill, I would absolutely send it in.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you have insurance for these situations.
كل انشورنس بميشيغان القانون يتطلب بأنه أنت عندك property insurance اللي هو هاي الشغلات بالضبط. فأي فاتورة تجيها تقدمها للإنشورنس مالتها والإنشورنس تدفعها.
Isn't it $1 million? Is that right? Isn't it usually $1 million in terms of property protection insurance, PPI?
I can't remember off the top of my head.
I believe the standard is $1 million in coverage. Don't quote me on this, but because I don't deal with this particular insurance a whole lot, but I believe it's $1 million of coverage. So I don't think that she's going to have caused $1 million worth of damage. She should be okay there. Yeah, and listen, if it's a very small bill, right? I mean, if she gets a $50 bill in the mail, it's not even worth reporting to the insurance, probably because the insurance premiums could go up. So, I mean, it's something that she'll have to think about. But if it's a large bill, absolutely send it to insurance. That's what you, as Lawrence just said, that's what you pay for.
مو بس مثلا الضوء مال الترافيك إذا يوقع هذا كلش غالي. مثلا تضرب هاي الساينز بالشارع المكتوب مثلا ستوب ساين لو بلي همينه او طبعا كل شيء يكلف هنا. Yes, anything. فيعتمد إذا الفاتورة تجي بسعر يعني قليل تقدر هي تدفعها أحسن لها حتى لا يصعد الانشورنس مالتها. بس بكل الأحوال تقدر تتصل للمكتب واحنا نقدر نساعدها.
The reason I mentioned if she was injured, she may have a case, is most people think that if they cause an accident, they don't have a case, or they can't pursue any benefits, and that's not the case. You might not get a ton of money in your pocket, but you still will have something that
but you want to get the medical bills covered.
Exactly.
And if you're missing work, you don't want to go bankrupt because you're not getting lost wages that you're entitled to. So absolutely.
سؤال المحامي كان بأنه هل هي متضررة؟ هواية من الجالية يعتقدون إذا هم غلطانين ما عندهم أي قضية. لا، عندهم قضية، خاصة لأنه لازم البلات مال الطبابة تندفع، خاصة اللي عنده الميديكيد ما يغطي حوادث السيارات، فلازم يروح عن طريق الانشورنس مال السيارة.
Yeah, and the reason for that side, if you remember, Michigan is a no-fault state. So no matter what happens in no matter who's at fault for an accident, your own insurance will pay for certain benefits.
مثل ما قلنا بالحلقات الماضية إنه ميشيغان is a no fault، يعني ياهو الغلطان أو مو غلطان، كل واحد يروح الطبابة على مالته الانشورنس. اكو
for
عضة
certain benefits.
اكو بعض اشياء بانه الانشورنس مالتك الشخصيه تدفع لك اياه لك.
And I have to mention, because a lot of people ask me this too, they say, well, I only purchased basic, no fault or PLPD or whatever it is. That doesn't matter, right? You are still entitled to benefits.
It'll only matter in terms of getting your car fixed or totaled, but
exactly
regarding medical and your pet benefits usually does not matter.
Well, exactly, unless you opt out of benefits, and that's a different story.
Said usually.
Yeah, exactly.
And that is a specific word in Arabic. They all الجالية من يخابرونا يقولون أنا يجوز ما عندي تغطية، أنا عندي بس one way يسموها.
Yes, they one way. I hear that all the time.
هي شنو الone way؟ الone way بأنه هو عنده تغطية بس ما عنده تغطية مالت تصليح سيارة فيسموها one way.
And I have to say, one way is not a legal term. That's not a legal term. It doesn't exist in the law. People say it. I hear it all the time. There is no such thing as one-way insurance. I am positive.
طبعا كلمة one way احنا ما عندنا ماكو بالقانون المحاماة الامريكي ماكو فشي اسمه one way، بس احنا تعلمنا من الجالية بانهم يقولون one way من ينباوع على البوليسة مالتهم ما عندهم تغطية لتصليح السيارة.
Right. So anyway, right.
Yes.
So I just want to say thank you to the caller. Please call back if you have any more questions, or if there's any other listeners out there who have questions.
Hopefully that was helpful. Hopefully we answered the question.
نشكر الأخت على اتصالها. إذا عندها أي سؤال آخر تتصل تتفضل، ولو إذا تريد تتصل بينا على المكتب.
If we didn't answer the question fully, call back.
No, but I think you did.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Our next.
Oh yeah. So we were just about to talk about a little bit about a trial. So
yes.
there was a fun case a few years back that I had, and this was actually a stolen vehicle case. It was an interesting case because I had a client who had a 1970 Chevelle, I believe it was a Chevelle SS, and it was a valuable vehicle.
Yeah, very nice old school car.
Yeah.
Which year was it?
It was a 1970, so it's a classic vehicle, right? It was, even back then it was near 50 years old, and now it would have been over that age, but she had taken out a policy of insurance to cover this vehicle, right? It's a classic vehicle. She wanted to make sure it was insured, didn't drive it around very much. Maybe to car shows every once in a while, and she'd actually inherited it from her late husband, who had unfortunately passed away. And it was his vehicle before hers. And so the title was transferred and she insured the vehicle with State Farm. The reason I really like to tell this story is because the two sides, my client and the insurance company really came at this case from totally different perspectives. And I'm actually going to start with what the other side said in this story. The other side thought that this case was very suspicious. Okay, from day one, they thought, and I should say that this person lived in the Detroit area. Okay, they thought that she had somehow had this vehicle stolen in order to receive the settlement proceeds from the insurance. Okay, and they thought that she had basically had the car either intentionally stolen or sold for parts, something like that, and that she needed the money or wanted the money. But what was fascinating about this is we strongly disagreed with it. The insurance didn't really have any evidence of this from the very beginning. They thought it was suspicious because it was stolen at someone else's house while she was on a trip in Florida. Okay. Which I could understand why they want to investigate that. That's fine. But my client had a very simple explanation, and that is it was getting on toward winter and she wanted to winterize the vehicle, and she had a family, it was essentially her aunt, but a family member who had a son who could winterize the vehicle for her, change the tires, basically get it ready to be stored away for the winter. And so she had taken it over to their house and expected to pick it back up when she came back a week later from her trip. Unfortunately, someone had broken into the home, which was in Detroit, and stolen the vehicle out of the garage. Apparently, one day the garage door was just found open. So someone must have seen the car going in there, thought it looked valuable, which incidentally it was, and took it out. So what happened in this case? This was a really interesting one because after we did some depositions and, found out some more information, my client was a manager at one of the big 3 car companies, made a very good living, had no financial troubles. Okay. Had been insured with the company for several years. And frankly, she also testified that, part of the reason she kept the vehicle was because it was her late husband's car and it was something to remember him by. So, essentially after we did all this discovery, they had found no motive and no reason for her to do this. But what was really interesting also was that the car itself was worth in excess of $50,000, and the policy was a maximum stated value of only $30,000. Now, if she had wanted to make money on the car, having the car stolen and getting $30,000 from insurance would be a lot less than selling the car for $50,000. And she even testified she had offers. So we thought, this is a slam dunk. They got to pay on this policy. But they still refused. And I feel like I should let you translate because I've said a lot.
Okay. هاي القصة هاي صعدت للمحكمة العليا. كانت الامرأة عندها استورثت عندها ميراث من زوجها اللي توفى. انطاها سيارة جدا قديمة ب 1970 جدا نادرة، وهي حبت بأنه تبقي السيارة إلها. انطت هاي السيارة الابن أختها حتى يسوي الهيال، يحضر الهيال للشتاء، يبدل التايرات، يسوي لها دهن، أي شيء مينتنس. هي بهالأسبوع سافرت، راحت لفلوريدا. من رجعت السيارة انباقت. البيت اللي كانت بيه السيارة كسروا الجراج وباقوا السيارة. الامرأة تشتغل ويا البيج 3 اللي هم ويا مال شركات السيارات الكبيرة 3. صار لها أمورها المادية جدا جيدة، كمانجر تشتغل، وصار لها فترة جدا طويلة ويا الانشورنس مال السيارة، لأن أهل الانشورنس ما قبلوا يدفعون أي شيء، لأنه كان أكو فد بالهم بأنه هي كانت تريد يعني تبيع السيارة تفسيخ أو تريد تبيع السيارة. فلذلك كانوا الانشورنس كان ببالها بأنه هي يعني انباقت السيارة عن قصد حتى يفلشوها ويبيعوها كقطع غيار وليس لو يبيعوها كسيارة عامة. بس احنا نعرف كل زين هي ما كانت، هي ما إلها يعني أي شيء بيها، وراحت وقفنا وياها وصعدنا وياها للمحكمة العليا.
Okay, so then after we presented all this information to State Farm, we said, hey, this is the information we've got. We really think this is a legit case. There's no fraud here. You should really pay it. They continued they basically continued their non-payment, saying that, it was still under investigation. And what they said was, we don't think we have to pay. The vehicle has never been recovered. So they never found the stolen vehicle. And to this day, as far as I'm aware, it was never recovered. Okay. And so they said, well, because the vehicle hasn't been recovered, we think it's somewhere. And we think that your client knows where it is. But again, they didn't have any evidence of that. And then the other thing that they claimed, which was interesting, was they claimed that no one had ever called 911 to report the stolen vehicle. Now, this was an interesting issue because if true, that would lend some credence to their suspicions.
So ليش بأنه هم الانشورنس قالت لا هاي أكو فد شيء غلط وما ندفع، وظلوا يقولون إحنا ما ندفع، لأنه أكو فد شيء ما يعني مو معقول. إذا تفسخ السيارة تجيب 30 ألف، سعر السيارة كان فوق 50 ألف، فإذا تبيعها هي أحسن لها تبيعها مما تجيب تفسخ السيارة. صعدنا للمحكمة العليا وبعدنا نطلب من الانشورنس بأنه يدفعون، ما يقبلون يدفعون. يقول لأنه لحد هاليوم كاعتقادنا ما لقينا السيارة، وهم يعتقدون بأنه صاحبة السيارة تعرف وين السيارة، بس هي ما إلها علاقة بها. الشغلة الثانية اللي هو همينة كانت أكو فد علامة استفهام، ليش ماكو ما خابروا ال 911 من انباقة السيارة؟ أنت من أي أحد يكسر البيت أو أي شيء ينباق رأسا تخابر الشرطة.
Now, what I think was really interesting here so we pulled the phone records for our client, and indeed there was no 911 call showing, and this was really interesting. And I said, well, wait a minute, my client has testified that they called 911, and there's no 911 call showing. So this is interesting, because were they lying? What happened here? And I think State Farm was really relying on that fact to say, well, wait a minute, if she lied about that, she could be lying about the whole thing. And what I did myself, I actually called a representative. She had at the time she had some kind of WOW phone service. I remember it being WOW because I hadn't heard of them at the time. And I called up the representative and I said, what is the explanation for why this phone call would not show up on a call log? And he said, oh, emergency calls don't show up on our call logs ever. And I went, that's what it is. So they don't record. I thought that was very strange, but this phone company simply did not record emergency phone calls. So when we went to trial, State Farm was questioning the WOW representative, is this her call record? Yes. Is there any call to 911? No. And then I just stood up and I said, do you record that kind of phone call? Well, no. So would it be on there if she made the 911 call? Well, no.
Okay.
So there we go. So they did, ultimately, in my estimation, they really didn't have any evidence. And what was a case where we got no offers the entire time, zero. Was the offer. Okay. Yeah. We didn't settle. Actually, we won at trial and got the full policy limit and attorney's fees on top of that.
Good.
And case evaluation sanctions. So yeah.
There you go.
It's pretty good.
كل زين.
So it's fun.
الانشورنس ظلت ترفض بأنه تدفع أي شيء على مود هاي القضية. طلبت التليفون الريكوردز مال التليفون مال الزبونة، شافوها ماكو 911 كول، والزبونة تقول لنا أنا خبرت 911. المحامي صعدت للمحكمة العليا، المحامي خابر كان عندها بوقتها واو، مثل شلون هسه تي موبيل وفرايزن عندها واو
كان واقف ذاك الوقت.
لا مو واقف، قال صحيح، قال له ليش هي مخابرة 911؟ قال له كل emergency call مكالمة ما تنزل على الريكوردز، ما تنزل كتقرير نهائيا. فالمحامي جان من وقف بالمحكمة وسأله هالسؤال وبين بأنه، لأنه هم إذا يقولون إذا هي تكذب بأنه هي ما مخابرة 911 أكيد تكذب على كل شيء بالضبط. بالأخير ربحنا القضية، البوليسي كاملة أخذناها، زائدا هم دفعوا الاترني في المبلغ مال المحاماة وأي مبالغ اللي كانت متعلقة بالقضية.
And then I guess
طبعا هذه تجي شطارة المحامي أنه اتصل بالشركة اللي مال التليفونات
بالضبط. لذلك من تصعد للمحكمة العليا لازم يعني you dig deeper، لازم تحفر. فلهذا شو نقول لكم؟ نقول لكم يعني مكتب المحامي لورنس قاجي دائما اتصلوا بهم، أي مشكلة عندكم، أي قضية عندكم
استشاراتهم مجانية. رقمهم 248-702-6641.
Indeed.
واللي عنده همينة سؤال هسه حاليا يقدر يتصل بنا على للإذاعة اللي هي 586-825-2015. همينة نقدر على الهواء نجاوب مثل ما هسه الأخت اتصلت. ايش قد بقى لنا أستاذ ساهر؟
باقي لنا تقريبا 6 دقائق.
We have 6 minutes.
Okay. So do we have time for one last quick story?
I think
Probably.
Quick one.
Well,
quick one.
if you don't explain in depth.
In too much detail.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, say that's
So just very quickly, we
quickly and short.
Tamara and I actually both worked on a case together that was a fun one that I just want to briefly mention. We had there was a small business owner who was injured and had claimed lost wages as a result of the accident. Basically, she injured her back, neck, and shoulder, and initially the insurance company refused to make any payments for her lost wages, basically saying you're an owner, so you know,
As owner.
we don't think there's enough information to do it. So you know what we did was, and this was all in pre-litigation. We didn't even have to file a suit to get this. Basically, what we did was we got in contact with her accountant. We got a whole ton of records, stacks of business records. But we sent all of her income information in, how her business ran. We had to explain a whole bunch of different operations to explain why, as an owner, she would lose out on income when she was injured, as opposed to just, you know, she could just keep paying herself. And we did that. And ultimately, the insurance company referred it out to a third-party company that agreed with us that she should be paid her lost wages, and we got her wages paid.
Yeah. الو مرحبا.
It's okay.
اللي اتصل وانقطع الاتصال يقدر يتصل مرة أخرى.
يعاود الاتصال.
Yes. هاي القصة همينة المحامي جان وأني اشتغلنا بيها سوا. كانت هي المتضررة كان عندها هي الأونر مالت بيوتي سكول، يعني مدرسة مالت تعلم البنات أو الأولاد بأنه
مكياج وجمال
وشعر وكل هالسوالف. فصار عندها القضية الحادث فترة ما قدرت تشتغل. الانشورنس ما يقبل يدفع الرواتب، يقول هي الأونر شنو هو اللي تقدر تخسره. المحامي جان واني ظلينا نحكي ويا الانشورنس، حكينا ويا المحاسبه مالتها، حكينا ويا التكسات مالتها، حكينا وياها شنو اللي ضررت به. شرحنا للانشورنس، الانشورنس خلى مكتب خاص مع المحاسبات وتقدمنا له كل الاوراق، والمكتب المحاسبه كان من صالحنا من جانبنا، ووافق وقال فعلا هي خسرت مبالغ وحصلت مبالغها، وهاي قبل ما نرفع أي قضية، هاي كلها كانت قبل ما نرفع القضية اشتغلنا بيها. هاي واحدة من الأشياء اللي أمانة
مكتب سواها
بالضبط. وهاي لو من ما حاكين ويا المحاسب مالتها لو أي أحد ونقولها قالوا ماكو ما تقدرين، خلاص كان ما حصلت أي شيء.
All right.
باقي لنا 3 دقائق.
We have 3 more minutes.
3 more minutes. Okay. Well, you know, we can give them a quick teaser of what we'll be talking about next time. We've got.
Okay.
We'll most likely be talking.
What do you have for next time?
So for next time, what we'll probably be talking about, because I don't think there's enough time to go through the whole concept today.
I know.
But we'll talk a little bit about like Uber and Lyfts. Sort of how they are, you know, typically independent contractors in Michigan, and sort of how claims work with them. You know, we have a lot of clients that drive for Uber and Lyft or are injured in Uber and Lyft, and those are a little different than the regular accidents. So I think that might be worth talking about.
الأسبوع القادم راح نتكلم على التغطية إذا تسوق الأوبر لو ليفت، لو أنت تكون راكب للأوبر وليفت، شنو التغطية، شنو إلك الحق بي وشنو مو إلك الحق بي، وشنو الباليسي مالتهم شو يقول. وهاي جدا جدا مهمة، لأنه هواية من الجالية يشتغلون الأوبر وليفت، أوبر ليفت أو أوبر إيت أو
Well,
a little bit different.
it's a network
Yes.
transportation company
Yes.
as defined under no
Yeah.
fault law. We
Yeah.
won't have to get into that.
بالضبط. نحكي بالمواضيع الأخرى لاحقا. Yes.
مستمعينا الأكارم، مشاهدينا الأعزاء، طبعا نشكر المحامي لورنس قاجي. شكرا جزيلا أستاذ لورنس.
Thank you so much for having us this week.
Thank you very much Mr. John.
It's always a pleasure.
وطبعا شكرا جزيلا، احنا دائما نتعبش يعني.
أهلا وسهلا للجميع.
لفائدة الموضوع يعني
طبعاً.
الموضوع مهم. مستمعينا، نلتقيكم إن شاء الله في الأسبوع القادم وفي حلقة جديدة مثل ما ذكر المحامي جان. إلى اللقاء يا أحلى الأصدقاء.